I'm curious to hear, what's happened since, like, I feel like, as you said, you travel the world, you've seen a lot of new things. Professionally, you've grown up a ton. What kind of, where are you today, and like, what are you up to these days?
Yeah, so I've taken a very entrepreneurial journey in my life, and I think I just got to a place where I didn't want my time to be controlled by somebody else,
Mhm.
and I think one of the things as a minority I had to learn was really the importance of finances, the importance of securing our financial future, financial literacy. So for me, I've taken quite a shift. Not only in diving into like content like Tony Robbins and like the Inky Johnsons and the Les Browns of the world, but also, reading and getting around people that you admire, that you strive to be like. And, I think there's a culture of complacency, a culture of mediocrity, so of course I pursued my master's. I did all these things. I had 4 jobs in grad school, for 2 years, 5 years ago, and now I'm in a space where I have trailers that I Airbnb out. I buy auction foreclosures. I work with some, coaches and mentors in different spaces to being able to help people elevate their lives and where they are in their journeys and be able to help them provide resources. We have charities that we work with named the Justice Project, where we help women and children with sex trafficking. So I'm in a space where I'm all about making an impact, living a purposeful life, but also being able to break generational curses of financial dysfunction and just dysfunction overall. I think that there's a lot of resources out there, but there's a lack of resourcefulness. And I think COVID was definitely a wake up call for a lot of people where we realized, well, what's the excuse now? You have all the reason in the world to go ahead and make shifts. And I was appreciative for all the jobs that I had, but I wanted to be a business owner. I wanted to just be able to own my own time. And to own time, you have to have money, and not that money buys you happiness, because it doesn't. But money definitely allows you the flexibility to have options. So I'm just in a space where I'm just diversifying and just doing things that bring me joy, but also being able to allow me to create as many residual assets so I could just do the things that matter.
Do you remember it? And I know there's many turning points and many experiences that shape one's life, but do you remember the point where you started to kind of like, where your mindset started to change to focus on your time versus,
Yeah,
working for someone else?
for sure. I mean, there were quite a few moments. I think a lot of us, we have moments. I lost a second mother to me from cancer.
Mm.
And I think anytime you lose someone you love, you start realizing, what are you doing with your time? Like, how are you making your life matter? How are you showing up? And I think those experiences where you realize you wish you had more time. See, when it comes to you having children and now wanting to go ahead and raise your children, or when it comes to a loved one being in the hospital and they're dying, or you want to spend their last, days with them, that's when I think people realize money matters, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's not important, but I think that if it's not that important, then why are we trade our time for money?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so if it wasn't like, if you love what you do, great, do it because you love it. And I love what Mark Cuban says. He says, don't follow your passion, follow your efforts. You want to separate your passions with what you do for money and allow money to work for you when you're sleeping, so that you can pursue passions and purpose and all those things. So if money is the thing that's getting in the way, get it out of the way so that you can focus on living your life and, being a person who's abundant. Then, so I don't care about fancy titles. I don't care about positions. I don't care. Like, I don't want any of those things. I want to be joyful, and joy comes from your purpose, and your purpose comes from how you impact the world.
Right.
And it comes from your perception, like, does your glass half full or half empty? Well, my glass is always full. Water, maybe air.
I'm curious, and I appreciate you sharing the story of the passing of your second mother. Do you think that traveling the world also had an influence, on top of obviously that? I'm curious, because that's what I hear. I hear that once you start visiting new worlds and you see different things, it changes, your lens even further.
Absolutely. I mean, Jesus, I went to like whale hunting villages. I stayed with nomadic tribe. Like I've done really crazy shit. People like my idea of vacation is not like at the Ritz-Carlton. It's like hanging out with cannibals, like learning something new. Like that's my idea of vacation. And I saw so many things and I loved it. Like I loved each and every one of those experiences. I love being in a place where no one spoke English. And I was like, this is chicken, and I was making chicken sounds. Like I love that because you learn a certain, yeah, it's funny. No, it's totally funny. That's totally me. You learn a certain level of patience that you didn't have. Like I feel like sometimes being here, we're not patient, but you put yourself in a country where no one speaks English, you better learn patience real quick. I've also had like my fair share of abusive relationships, where I didn't realize my worth. Right. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to grow through, to realize. And I'm not saying I'm glad that I went through that. Like nobody deserves to go through that. But I think by me growing through that, it allowed me not to be bitter, but to be better. It allowed me to grow through my pain. And I think one of the things, the hardships that people have to learn through is like, you have to learn self-love. And that's one of the hardest things to do. But it's like, if you never challenge what you think self-love is, like if you never challenge your values, how do you know what you stand for? If you don't allow your adversity to actually push you and stretch you, then how do you expect to grow? And the times that you learn the most in life is not when you're winning, it's when you're failing, but like you failing forward, And if you think about success, the first three letters is suck. Like whatever you're gonna do, you're gonna suck at it. You so
I
are,
haven't heard that one. Yeah, no.
Oh yeah, but yeah, like absolutely, my travel was just one of the greatest experiences. I left like a corporate job where they paid for your car and they paid for your food and they paid for your everything. Everything was paid for. And I picked up and I was like, I gotta go. And actually, I got scammed because I actually applied for a job in Italy to teach English, and I was all packed up, ready to go. I had my luggages, and then I found out that the job I applied for, like they weren't looking for teachers. And you should have heard me. I was like, "Are you sure you don't want a teacher? Like I make a really great teacher. Like I'll just come there." Like I was trying to convince them, to like take me on anyway. No, and it really. I mean, it sucks to be scammed, but like I'm not afraid of risk. I don't live my life in fear. Like I really don't. Like I think living in fear, you give fear too much real estate.
Yeah, wow, this is gospel. I think what you're saying, like most people don't like, when someone has succeeded in life, and what my define as success might be different from everybody else, but like you forget all of those tribulations, like the stuff you've just described. And I'm sure that's just the surface level, like I'm sure there's stuff that we'll never see, and that's okay. We're not looking for it, but I'm just saying, like, it's really impressive that, you've come this far and you've been able to kind of establish yourself and spend your time the way you choose to. So that's really, really powerful stuff. And just picking up on something you said, because it's so good, like how you're describing, it's more kind of like the mental and like the self-love, like that. If you don't have that right, you're going to find yourself in other scenarios. But anyway, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. How much was your initial tribe, and then your sorority tribe, like how influential was that combination in your kind of journey? Or was it more like your individual, kind of like swimming upstream? Like what do you think?
Look, everyone has a tribe. Maybe for some people it's family, for some people it's friends. My parents set a really great foundation in terms of good values. But like, my father being the youngest of 23, we were born in the Bronx, raised like I was just like, he literally wiped his like ass with leaves. Like he would tell me, because that's his father owned a farm. His father was a Taino Indian.
Wow.
Yeah. So like I could truly, I was like, oh, I'm 25% Taino Indian.
You did
like,
the 23, really the DNA thing? Yeah.
No, I haven't, but like he was definitely like Indian,
Yeah.
So of course, like my parents influenced me. My father owned a bodega in the Bronx, and I saw my father work really hard. I learned his work ethic from what I saw, but also really being self-aware that he was a slave to his business. And that's the difference between being the business owner and being a business operator. So when I saw that, I realized I don't want that. I wanted more ownership, not really operatorship, which was very different, you know. And yes, of course, I would say my tribe and sorority influenced me, but I was always very a solo. I was a solo. You know, everyone did this. I kind of went the opposite way, and just every single thing that I did. And I can't tell right now if that served me or that didn't serve me, because in a lot of respects, I also had to learn how to work with people. Like, you know, sometimes when you're delegating or you're micromanaging, you actually hinder people's leadership and you hinder people's capacity, and people end up learning like they're only capable of what you've delegated to them versus allowing them to fail for their own selves, you know. And those are some of the things I had to learn as an older sister, and passing down the torch to the newer people. My capacity was here, and because somebody else's capacity was here doesn't mean that their capacity wasn't 100%. That's 100% of their capacity, and because it didn't measure up to mine, that's where judgment happens. And you know, no matter what we say, like it's like, oh well, we don't judge. I don't want to say I try, because trying and doing are two different things, but I do my hardest, and allowing people to show up with where they are, so I can meet them where they are, so I could expand, you know, meet them where they are for understanding, and you could help them kind of take them to where you need them to be. But you know, I think when we judge, we allow our previous experiences to impede on new experiences, you know. And I think I've always been a risk taker, and yes, I got scammed a shitload. My first investment property was a scam, and man, like those are paying, like that's an expensive scam, okay? Like it's an expensive scam, but like I'm grateful. And then from October 2019 straight into COVID, I bought 22 properties.
Wow.
So like I don't think that would have happened had that not been the case. I don't think I would have met my mentors. And here's the deal. There's no self-made anyone. Like you learn from everyone, you know? So like, I definitely like attribute a lot of my growth to my mentors and my coaches. And without them, like, I don't know if I would be where I am today. I'm super grateful, you know, because for me, I don't strive for success. I strive for prosperity, because success is very linear. It's very job-based, career-based. It's all, you know, and I want prosperity in every pillar, every bucket of my life, you know. So I don't want to hijack this call.
No. Luz, you're making me think you need a podcast, because I feel like no, I'm serious. Like there's not enough. There's a lot of financial freedom people in the market, but like what you're speaking about prosperity, like I don't usually see it from one of our faces, you know, which is it, not to say it's not there. I haven't been looking for it, but I'm sure that if you looked, there's not enough, because what you're saying and your honesty and your, you know, and I know your heart, like you're very kind, including with your flexibility and schedule your time here. So thank you. Like it's okay to hijack, because you're saying really powerful things that I think our community and the marketplace just needs to see more of. So, you know, if you do start that podcast, I want to get credit for it.
Thank you.
But all good. With regards to just bringing it all back to like Greek life, are you still involved in your organization or?
So I was on the board for a period of time. I did some cool things, and I'm proud of those things. But no, I mean, if somebody needed me, I'd come around. You know, I think I've shifted some priorities in my life. I'm always going to be a sister. I'm not going to be like, I was in a sorority. I'm like, oh, were you? Tell me, right? I'm always going to come around. And every now and then I'll come around for the new intake. And the night that I come around, it's like, it's pretty impactful, because I talk about character, and I talk about commitment, and I talk about intention, and I talk about people aren't a victim of their circumstances, they're a victim of their decisions. Like, and I talk about stuff, like I talk about things that like, I'm like, wait, like if we're really gonna change pledge processes, if we're really gonna like adjust, then let's make this a character development system. Like, let's shock your body in character development so that when you grow through that, like you really grow through an experience. Because I'm tired of coming around sessions and I'm like, and I hear from all the Greeks. Okay. Yep. So all of you know what I'm talking about. Like, okay, don't look at me like, oh, I'm like, no, you all know what I'm talking about. You've all had to adjust, and nothing wrong with adjusting, right? Adjusting is really the only solution. But if we're going to adjust, like, let's figure out a way to keep tradition, install character, right? And see what we could do to really help, because we have a responsibility. I don't think that Greeks understand, right? When you make a commitment to choose to elevate your life and choose to stand in the gaps for people, you have a personal commitment and responsibility to lead. And leadership is done through influence, right? There's servant leadership and there's positional leadership. I give two shits about positional leadership. I don't care, because to me, I'm like, oh, you have a fancy title? Oh, how cool. Like, okay, but then your character is rotten, completely rotten, you know? Yeah. So for me, it's just like, if we're gonna continue to do what we do, because we did it so well. And yes, there were a few bad apples. There are a few situations where I'm like, okay, you took it beyond, like you didn't have to haze, like that's crazy, right? But we have a personal responsibility. And like, what are we doing? What are we doing for our minorities? What are we doing for our Latinos? Like, how are we paving the path? How are we changing lives? How are we impacting people? Because success to me is, how better off is your life because you've served somebody else, right? And success to me is, you know, who you are when the money's gone. Essentially speaking, like with us, like we don't discriminate. Like for us, we allow the process to weave that person in and out, like, right? Like we've allowed that. Like I've heard of situations where it's like somebody said, well, they wouldn't accept me. And it's just like, I think that when you do that, you prejudge and you don't allow people to have, like, you even know how they can show up as to be a sister, right? Because I've seen some of the strongest pledges and I'm like, but you ain't doing shit. You did nothing. Like you've, right? And I've seen some of the weakest links like actually outperform. And yeah, we say like how you are in the process is how you're going to be as a sister. Or I hear that, but I'm just saying like, well, how do you even get a chance to experience that if you don't allow the process to? Now, I believe in character vetting. I believe in like I'm not looking to get you. Like you have to go ahead and prove that like you're a person worthy of my time to invest. Right? Like my process is, what if we actually vetted, like truly vetted, based on character, based on your social impact, based on a few things. Like I'm big on that. And then when you don't accept someone, let's just say like this is it, why don't you help them understand why and help give them a pathway of like, hey, like these are some books I recommend. These are some like workshops that I read. Yeah, you need self-love. You need, because there are people who ruin it. Like, I agree. Like, there are people that I'm like, oh, I don't even want them in my life. Right. But something you mentioned, I think that one of the reasons, and maybe secretly, like one of the reasons why I'm not involved, or I mean, I literally have other things going on. And when I can get involved, but I think a lot of sisters and brothers are kind of discouraged. Right, especially old school, like they come around and it's like, this is what we have left, and for them, it wasn't what they know of their organization. So they're just like, well, I'm gonna hang out with the sisters or the brothers that I normally hang out with, and I'm going to exclude myself of all of these new changes, all these different situations, and they don't allow themselves to say, okay, well, how can we be part of the solution? I don't like it. Right? I don't like what's going on, but like, how can I make my mark? How can I still make an impact? How can I, and I have sisters now, like people who made it, they're like, you were like my best night. Like, thank you so much for coming out. Like I've learned, and I don't even remember them. I'm like, well, you look really different, right? Like on the other side of, crossing. But like, and that makes me feel so good. Not because I need to feel significant, but because I love the impact that it's made.
Right. Wow. Well said. And then it's funny because the the type of Greek you described is me, like exactly what you said about coming back to the organization and realizing it's not lesser than, but it's different from what you went through. And it's like, it is painful.
It
you know,
is.
even and I mean, I don't know if this is your experience. My experience is that there's still tradition. There are people I know who are leading the organization that I knew, that I still know, and that knew what I knew, you know, like they were there in the 90s as I was going through it, the 2000s as we were going through it together. But some reason they've also shifted, and I guess it's an adaptation to the new class and like the new generations. But yeah, anyway.
It is. Yeah, for sure. It is an adaptation.
So cool. So Luz, how can people find you if they want to kind of connect with you afterwards? Because I like
201. No. Listen, Jesus, I can't. I don't like social media. I know this is like it's like meh, like X, but like if you want to talk to me, call me.
Yeah.
Text me. But like even when you text me, I'm gonna make you get on the phone with me. I'm like, hey, like it's great speaking to you. I just don't like social media. I know I have an Instagram. I don't know my password. Okay, no. Like that's no there. I'm like literally shaving like myself. But you know, I'm on Facebook, but like I'm not on it. Like I'm more present. But you know, if somebody needed me, like they could always, and I'm sure you're gonna have like a bubble that's like reach her at whatever. But yeah.
Happy to be the filter. You know, we could say send an email to Greekster at Gmail or whatever.
They can have my email address. Like they can have all of that. Yeah. I mean, I want to be a resource to the community. Mm-hmm. You know, like I wish I had more access to like people who had information. Like I wish I understood the foreclosure process. I wish I understood. I had vending machines at one point. I wish I understood that. What? I should think some. Yeah, like
oh what my type? God. Like what were they selling? Candy, soda, like
all sorts of like Doritos, Oreo. I remember coming home and like having like my whole dining room. It's like Oreos. And then I'm like, oh my God, sometimes the snacks would be expiring. I'm like, eat them all quick. I'd be like, trick or treating, here are your snacks. It was just so crazy. Like my life, I had gold parties, like people coming to the house and trading in their gold for money, and I would make a commission. I used to sell comedy tickets. Like, Jesus, I can't even begin to tell you all of the different shenanigans I'm part of. But like, I say that to say, like, we all have a responsibility to share, right? We have a responsibility, and I don't like some people that don't want to share because they live in a limiting space. They live in scarcity. Mm-hmm. I don't live in scarcity. I'm not afraid that someone's going to take my market, take my pledgee. I'm not afraid that someone's going to take my employee. I'm like, no, like they're not mine. Like they're the universe's, they're God's. You know, and like, I'm just here to, you know, to be part of this experience. And if I can help somebody, enhance somebody's life, shorten their trajectory, you know, give them a nugget, give them a tool, like that's my responsibility. And because of that, I know I always get abundance. Like I don't live in that limiting space. I'm not like, oh, I can't subscribe to that. It's too much energy.
Yeah. No, your voice, your power, your wisdom, your experience, you need microphones in front of you talking to our communities, because I feel like, you know, oftentimes we do talk in scarcity terms, and it's unfortunate that that's the case when we're like, there's bigger, more important things to worry about in your life, you know, given the limited time that we have. So well, on that note, thank you for the time that you allocated to us, and my apologies again for my second frat boy being missing.
I'm here. I'm in the flesh. Remember,
yes. I'm sorry. You are official. You've gone through the process. You've now become an honorary frat boy. We accept.
Yeah. Well, I made it. Like this is my dream. No, but I pledge, but I'm pledging. This is so awesome. No, but Jesus, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Like I appreciate being asked, and it's just I'm grateful, you know, because you didn't have to ask me. You didn't have to ask me to come here. But like I love stuff like this. Anything that I could do to add to whatever you're doing to enhance it, I don't mind even doing a session with you guys, I mean, the ideas are there, there's plenty of ideas flowing. So
Yeah, no, and just for the audience, before this show, Luz and I had a conversation, and she's also introduced us to some like video production websites where you can actually create easy digital videos. So I'm
you
learning
check that out, by the way?
constantly. Video Hive, I checked it out. Yeah, yeah.
It's like official, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
amazing. I love it. That's awesome.
So thank you, Luz, for your time, and we look forward to just watching you continue to grow and be awesome. So thank you.
I appreciate that. God bless, and we'll speak soon.
Yeah.